Good morning, traders. Welcome to the pre-market YouTube stream that we open up to the public every single Wednesday. Thanks for joining us this morning. This is Spartan speaking, by the way. Going to give you guys a little bit of a breakdown on what's going to happen this morning before I pass it over to Beth and we start the morning. Basically, what's going to happen is once I'm done speaking, like I said, I'm going to pass over to Beth. She's going to come on, give you a breakdown of the macro environment, any news events that happen over the course of the evening or that are going to be happening this morning or today. Go through any of the relevant commodities, ETFs, or bigger picture items that make sense to be looking at. Once that's done, I'm going to come on. We're going to go through the names that are gapping up, gapping down. We'll go through the news associated with those gap up, gap downs, go through the technicals on them, build an action plan on those individual names, as well as go through the SPY and the FANG. After that's done, I'll pass it over to South Beach, who will come on, give you a breakdown of what he's looking at from a analyst perspective today, individual name perspective. And then we'll do a quick little recap of those individual names and the SPY and the FANG that I talked about just before then. And we'll be ready for the open. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass over to Beth, and I'll talk to you guys shortly. Beth, ready? It's all yours.
I am indeed. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome. Pre-market here at SpartanTrading.com. It is Wednesday. We open it our live YouTube stream. Those who are so inclined to join us. Lots to talk about. And a lot of it, I think, is a function of where we stand in the cycle with liquidity as well as interest rates globally. It's going to be fascinating. The market definitely has the yips right now in terms of the big eye. And the reason being is because everyone is now believing that the Fed is behind the curve as opposed to in front of the curve. And some of the stuff with the twist, it gets really complicated, right? Okay, so let's take a look at least in terms of the data that came out overnight. We did have a small build on the API. Japan industrial production was softer. Capacity utilization was higher and the industrial production softer. But I think what got everybody's attention, right, was the inflationary data out of the UK. This goes to the core, guys, in the sense that we continue to, the narrative continues to be higher interest rates overseas. The fact is the central banks in, well, the UK as well as the Europe central banks are giving the inclination that they are taking their foot off the metal to the pedal in terms of quantitative easing, et cetera. And now we have this setup going on in terms of where we go, at least here in the States. The reality is, as long as the market thinks that the Fed is behind the curve, that creates a situation where you have liquidity, you have these sort of volatility declines. The market will embrace if the Fed gets ahead of the curve. That's what it wants. It's telling us exactly what it thinks. And the problem is, I don't know how the Fed gets itself out of this right now. They're talking about the twist with longer dated stuff, but it's going to be fascinating. And that's going to be in the background now for some time. We still have not reached a rate where yields would dramatically take away from bonds, from stocks, but something to think about, right? What do we got today? EIA, the FOMC minute. I don't think there's going to be anything dramatic coming out here. But the market's saying, yeah, Bostic is going to be coming out as well. So, well, you know, it's fascinating. It's all about inflation numbers, right? And this is going to be the short-term shocks to this market as a whole. Okay. All right, let's take a look for Elliott Wave peeps. This is Avi Gilbert, the best of the best, 40.80 on the future side. On this, you can see here, well, with SB. But anyways, you can see that gets taken out. Then it changes the whole narrative here, right? This becomes all day B, and then we have wave decline. So we will see how that plays out as well. Interesting, right? European companies flush with cash turn to stock buybacks. Right? And this is a big deal because we haven't seen anything like this, right, since the before the financial crisis, right? So this is notable and something that we do have to pay attention to. And once again, like I said, I think we're going to continue to see money peeling out of the States here to overseas. Let's see what our gal Cat, she's been very active, guys. I mean, a lot of selling going on. What is she buying? She did, I saw a lot of sweeps going through yesterday on this genome ARKG ETF that she runs. Kind of fascinating. Continues to sell first. And on the other side, what is she buying? You know, she's all in, guys, with, you know, Square, with Bitcoin, yada, yada. We're going to see a real smackdown on the ARKK today, obviously. Let's take a look at some of these analyst upgrades. The ones that really matter to me clearly are the ones that have the top grades. We do have a lot of initiations, and a lot of those initiations fall within the healthcare system, right? UNH, right? CVS, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so in terms of insider transactions, this is notable, and we've talked about this before in terms of the commodity side, buying and selling. So today we have this ERLFF entry gold, and we have selling of this PI and this Pine Cliff. Just keep an eye on that. I do like to see what the stock rankings are, but as mentioned before, it has to be 70th percentile and higher, plus it has to be greater than 20% upside or downside. And as you can see here, Cogenex meets that from Raymond James, Brian as well, and he did both Exxon Enterprise yesterday. Well, you know, we're going to see another good day. We did have obviously CVS, Viacom, and Phase. I want to see what gets bought on this, and I think we will have buying coming in. You know, gap downs are a lot. Well, any gap up, any gaps, basically you see it do the opposite, whether it's profit taking, whatever. So we'll see the quality of the bounce in this market. Yesterday, once again, it was 80-20. There was nothing that reflected that we would have this sort of pullback. We did some, this YSG was nonstop, GDS was nonstop, QS. So I want to see if that continues on the option side. That will give us some inclination. And this is so light, it's not even funny. And yet, as you can see here, this Tesla was buying. The majority of it, a lot of it was weekly, but this June was pretty big size, guys. This was, you know, pretty chunky. So someone was definitely, part of that could be a roll, I don't know, but we'll see how that plays out. In terms of on the large sweep side, I have it set for over 1 million. There was Wix, was bearish puts, IPOE, bullish, SDLD, and I shouted these out as well. All right, so let's take a look here, because this does matter, right? We have to start thinking in terms of bonds, right, versus stocks, and the correlations and where we're going with this. So clearly this is incredibly negative. And when you see this sort of negative correlation, what does that mean? Stocks and yields both go down. Okay, it's just bonds get sold off and the stocks get sold off initially. And this goes back to 1965, and it has, again, has to do with the Fed being behind the curve, right? So until the market anticipates and expects that the Fed is getting it right, we are going to have these sort of shocks. Is it dramatic? No, not really, but something to think about, okay? And you can see here, these are the yields going on as well. So obviously, it's going to be fascinating to see. And the ultimate arbiter of this is it's going to be good for financials and bad for tech. Okay, and this goes back quite a while away. So you can see that in the short term, okay, if you look further out, right, 3, 6, 1 year, clearly you see that as a whole, the market starts to improve, okay? And then you would look at cyclicals, defense, small caps, large caps, etc. All right. Let's take a look here in terms of growth versus valuation. And you can see here, this goes all the way back to 1928, guys. So this is a big deal. So these ratios that we're looking at are important if you want to look at the overall. I have to say, and I know it's kind of wonky, but the reality still is we've never experienced a sort of quantitative easing. So yeah, it's important, but okay. And in here on the growth side, right, you can see that it's 1 week out, 2 months out, negative, but not to the degree, except right here, this 1 week out short term. We can say that, yeah, we're in for a little bit of sloppy choppy on the downside. And it can be rather robust, right? And it does put a negative spin in terms of the statistical probability long term. And as you can see here with value, 2-3 months out, that's where the sweet spot is on that. But even so, guys, I mean, it's still not to a degree that is actionable for me, except farther out, 6 months, 1 year. It's got to be 80+%, and you can see here 6 months, okay? And this is value versus growth relative to the deviation, right? And you can see here that value outperforms growth. Okay? And here's growth, 2 months out, growth outperforms value. So it's fun to look at, and basically you have to be on your toes because it's going to be rotation, rotation, rotation. All right, so let's take a look here. This is not a bad heat map for us, FYI. Bitcoin's 9, I think it's going to be like 1. So expect a bounce in Bitcoin. That's what it's telling me. Okay, and we'll see what these others look like. You know, when we get a sea of green, I prefer it in the single digits, guys. That tells me that we're going to get a bounce. That's what it's setting up right now. And the bounce would probably happen tomorrow on Friday in this market. Okay. All right. And fund flows, money coming out of energy, right? And going into the SPY. It wasn't a lot, but notable. That's VXN. The pivot's 2550. As long as we're above 2550, the risk is on the downside for the Qs. This is the tech one. This is how I view this, and this is my pivot. It has been working really well for us. So we'll see. I bought a little bit of VIX yesterday, mainly because I wasn't happy with where things were going. So especially that was not a nice close. I was not aggressive enough as I should have been off of that. And we'll see, like I say, I want to see what kind of bounce we get, and then I'll assess it from there. All right, on the bond side, yields are higher, 30, 10, and 5, and down on the 2. Don't forget with this twist business, it's really going to be interesting to see how these the curve goes with this. Canada yields are up, overseas, Germany, right, UK, all yields are up, Japan down, Hong Kong down, Australia up. All right, 10-year, sideways consolidated, nothing there for us. This is the TLT. I continue to say we're going down. I'm looking for 120 by the fall. And here you can see, continue to see, this is the yield curve. This is the 1030. This is the 1020. And you can see how it's coming back down here. This is the 210 flagging still. The German against the 10. You can see that the German rates are continue, but we are in extension. If we pop this top, then obviously then the narrative with the European and the UK yields going higher are the same. And you can see here we're right into on the German 10-year. We're right into the 50 EMA on the monthly. And here's the gilts, the 10-year. We haven't broken yet, but I expect it to break down on the gilts and us to get down to 119.55. All right, futures, you know. Okay. Like I said, I want to see what kind of bounce we get. And on the commodity side, it's a sea of red as well. Okay, hogs and cattle are up, London, coffee, yada, yada. And this is what you would expect right now. The market is getting its bearings. We talked about it yesterday in the room, that both the gold as well as the crude failed. But I want to see it make a higher lows. That's what I want to see. So I want to see it basically hold up this extension right here, gold 1841, and we've got the same thing on the crude. That's exactly what I'm looking for right now. If it does, then we're going to start the next leg up in those markets. Bitcoin. All right. So basically, I don't think we're done on the downside yet. I think we basically get down to 28,280, but it did bounce off of the 50% fib. We'll see what happens there. The real pivot's going to be up here, guys. This 42,740 right here. We've talked about it. 42,730. That's the pivot on the upside. So it could bounce, but as long as it doesn't reclaim the 42,730, it has risk on the downside. Here you have the dollar, still a little bit lower, but nothing big going on here. The British pound trying, let's see if we pop that top, I think we do. Here's the euros. I want us to basically, this is a monthly to hold last month's high. Here's Japanese yen, we've talked about that. I don't actually think the yen's gonna appreciate that much against the US dollar. Here's the Chinese yuan. Consolidative, I was expecting it to break, but it looks like it's holding right now. This is going to be important. If it starts to go up, then I think that some of these Chinese names will come in. Here's the futures. This is the S&P mini. Key is going to be clearly last week's low and holding this extension. Okay, and this extension goes back to March. This is a channel that we're in. If we do break last week's low, I'm not exactly sure we have much, how far we go right now, but as you can see here, maybe 2.5, something like that. But there's some other things that are telling me we have 6.43% potential on the downside. Okay, here we have on the Nasdaq, the Qs, E-mini. We have potentially, if we do break last week's low, guys, move down here, which is 6.10%. Okay, and that's the 23.6%. All right, here's the Russell, same narrative. If we start to break down here, potentially from where we are, we could get down to 20. So I'm looking basically for 23.6% fib retracement based off of where we are. But if we do start to break, it's obviously holding up the best, right? Is right now, and we'll see. A lot of these things are also starting to look like M's, so we have to be aware of that. Nasty, and me with my M's, this is not a good thing. My M's are inverse W, right? Got to take out, and basically the center right here, the key pivot is going to be 23.6%, 62,119 on the FNG, on the FANG. All right, XLC, what's going on here? Okay, so what I was looking at in terms of symmetry on this, and last time this happened was back in August, September. We had a decline of 12.98% on the XLC. And basically that would get us down to here, 68.97. So something to be aware of. We are breaking below the 23.6%, but we had such a crazy ass move last week, right? That we have to see how that plays out. So this is what happens when you have these kick-ass ranges. You get these kick-ass divergences, right? So this is the monthly. Same thing's going to be. Take out last week's low, and this is basically right down here. Whether we hold this extension on the XLK, we'll see. No damage for now has been done. Okay, on the weekly, monthly charts. Right? Same thing, here's the XLY. We have the double top. Let's see what happens here. We're still above the prior month's low. It's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out. I think people are going to get really scared. I don't think we break, but if we do, it's technicals. We basically have to look, okay, what's the next leg down? If we do break, then basically potentially we have this move down here to 155. XLP, same narrative, right? We break last week's low. We have room to the downside, and not as much here on the XLP, but it's notable. Got to be aware of that. Break would be 69.41, and then a move down here to the 68.18. Like I say, I don't think we have a large move down on some of these sectors. The financials, as you can see here, obviously holding up fine right now. This is the monthly. It has room clearly down to here, 34.72. I still think, a lot of these are BTFD guys, but you have to be very selective in terms of where you stick your bids in right now. I think the transports is the one that kind of gives me the most pause. And because it was the leader, I think this one actually is going to be the one that comes down the most And I think we're going to basically come to the bottom end of this channel. That's the monthly as well. Okay. XLV healthcare, got a little bit of a double top going on. We are breaking below last month's high. A little bit of a negative here. You know, we're going to take this one step at a time. My narrative right now is I think that the healthcare as well as the bios and the small caps will see money floating around, but it's going to be day to day right now in terms of what we're going to see. If we start to see a conviction coming in on the tech side, that will be really interesting. Here you have the builders pulling back. A lot of these were so extended. Clearly on the monthly, no damage has been done. And this is a long-term swing for us. We could pull back to 82.11. Okay, so like I say, from a longer term perspective, no damage has been done. On the bios, this is interesting, and I know that this doesn't kind of make sense, but I just think that this is going to be an interesting sector. We'll see whether Spartan gets to shout out some of these little baby bios. We'll see how that plays out. It does have room down to 118.50. I think it holds. A lot of these are going to be reversion back to the mean. XLI. Now, on some of these, reversion back to the mean, guys, means, quite a bit. So this would be 80, 86. So you could be talking, 10, 15, 20% on some of these, right? And Amazon, let's talk about Amazon right now. The problem I have with Amazon is basically, okay, we're in the middle, right? The mid of the actual overall multi-month is 32.19. All right, we're slightly below it. Room down here to 31.58. Another room. This is still within a multi-month consolidated pattern. Once again, I want to see us make higher lows. That's what I want to see us. I want to see last week's low hold. If it doesn't, well, then we got to talk. Okay, because then we probably have room back down here to 28.71. Right. Let's take a look at crude, still within the monthly consolidation. You can see the pennant here. We'll see how this plays out. If we do break down, that's a different narrative. We probably will get down to 53 on it. I just don't see it though right now. We did get rebuffed on gold on the weekly, right? And it's coming back within this downtrend line. So that's notable. The key for me basically is going to be this 1829 on the pivot. So keep an eye on that if it can close above that. Gold, silver is still consolidative, did not break out or down. We'll see how that plays out. Bitcoin, gold, this is something that I've been talking to you about, right? Bounced off, interestingly enough, the 50% fit. Kind of cool, right? Let's see how this plays out. As long as we're below this extension right here on the spread, okay, the risk continues to be that gold will outperform Bitcoin. So that probably means that Bitcoin is going to continue to sell off. Okay. My time is up. Once again, welcome to those of you who are joining us. Pre-market here at SpartanTrading.com. This is what we do every day. It's kind of fun. Are you ready, sir?
Just 1 minute best, please.
Not a problem. Okay, so let's continue on. Gold, crude, sideways consolidation, nothing there. Gold, copper, guys, I want you to keep an eye on this. This is a big deal. I've been talking about this. This is starting to reclaim. So what is this telling us? That basically copper is going to start to sell off. Okay, so that's, not something we want to see in terms of economic recovery. It is an industrial metal, clearly. Keep an eye on that trade. I actually may be buying some puts in some of the copper names, FYI, as a result of that. Here's gold. Yen continues. This is fascinating and important. So just keep an eye on this because this is heavily traded. There's a lot of money that comes into this. So that's why I'm thinking the Japanese yen doesn't actually strengthen that much. Okay. And that's what it's telling us, that gold will stay strong and the yen would probably soften. All right. Here's silver. Hate it. Basically broke and then falling back below 27.95, guys. If it doesn't basically on the weekly, if it doesn't close this week above 27.95, okay, I'm going to be buying some silver puts, just so you know. Now, SMH. Okay, so I got it on my socks. Bad me. I should have stayed in it. But anyways, let's see what happens. I'll probably buy a little bit more on the sock side, just so you know. Room down to 222.04. There's a lot of support that's going to come in, but we have to see how the market holds up, right? It's all about technicals. Let's take a look quickly on BABA. And the reason why I want to look at BABA is because this was showing some potential. So for me right now on the weekly, as long as BABA holds above this pivot 208.35, okay, the bounce play is still intact. And that is notable. Okay, and we have to be aware of that.
All right, Beth, ready to go.
All right, have fun, guys.
Alrighty, guys, morning. What's going on? Let me just pop up the screen share here. There we go. If you guys are new to chat, make sure to go through the, your Discord sent to your email. And then also when you come in, click on the disclaimer, click on the new to chat information to read from top to bottom, and you should be good to go. Anyways, I'll go through that later on. Pre-market tickers on watch. Let's take a look at what we got going on today, guys. MSTR, Coin, TGT, Square, Rita, Mara. MSTR. So these guys are gapping down, obviously, with the lower price of Bitcoin. Coinbase trading lower as well with the lower course in Bitcoin, as well as they did a 1.2 billion convertible senior note in private institutional offering. Target earnings beat EPS and revs year-over-year growth 23.4%. Stocks gapping up. Square gapping down in sympathy with the markets. Square raises $2 billion via senior notes and private institutional offering. Rita announces FDA has asked the company to request a pre-NDA meeting for one of their drugs. Mara gapping down in sympathy with Bitcoin as well. Let's take a look at these names from a technical standpoint intraday. So first two that we're looking at today, guys. And obviously we can see the spies into the 50 MA this morning, which we talked about last night. But anyways, let's take a look at the first two, MSTR and Coin. We'll go through the SPY in just a minute. So let's take a look at these two guys. MSTR gapping down. Let's see where we got room to today. So we did get a pretty large range break to the downside from yesterday, which I'm going to label. Considering the large move in Bitcoin, this thing hasn't moved too much to the downside just yet, in my opinion, which we'll have to watch. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this thing intraday. The lower end level's a little bit too far away to see, but should be all right. Yeah. All right, pivot to the downside today, 437.50. This level is able to hold. We got room for continuation towards 404.59. That level breaks. We got room down towards 373. Able to hold. Look for a pushback to 467.01 to 501.19 on the upside. Overall on MSTR, kind of bleeding on the bearish side today. Looking for a continuation lower if this pivot point is unable to hold. So we'll see what happens there. Coin, let's take a look at this. All righty, so I got to do a fib extension to the downside, short term. I'll do a recent fib as well. There we go. That's more accurate. I think we'll hit the 412s. There we go. All right. So 223.14. Pivot to the downside today. Levels unable to hold. We're towards 216.47 to 212.05. Able to hold. Look for pushback to 230.07 to 238.69 on the upside. Overall on coin, going to be leaning bearish neutral today. Looking for a continuation grind lower. And then I do think we can see a little bit of a bounce, but for right now, it's looking bearish. And then MSTR, I don't think I mentioned it, but leaning bearish neutral as well on that name. So that is MSTR. That is coin. Let's take a look at the next two. TGT, Square. All right, target, nice little gap up. Not huge, but decent gap up from earnings. Typically what we've been seeing though is all these names that gap up from earnings usually give it back on the open, guys. So keep that in mind. Thinking, no different today. Don't need that. All right, 210.86, pivot to the upside today. Levels able to hold. We do have room towards 213.76 to 217.34. Unable to hold, look for a pullback to 208.88 to 206.23 on the downside. Overall on target, going to be leaning on the bullish. Neutral side today. I think we get a little bit of a pullback on the earnings, gap fill, and then we look for the basing to occur and take the name long. So I do think that we do give it back, that earnings move, just like we've seen on a lot of different names this earnings season. And then we look for the basing to happen intraday, if it does happen, that is. All right, let's take a look at Square, which I do think most of it's labeled. 90.88. Surprise. Oh, there you go. I can see lower now. All right, 197.67, guys. Pivot to the downside today. Levels unable to hold. Moving towards 190.92 to 185.26. Able to hold. Look for a push back towards the 203.37 level to 208.96 on the downside. Going to be leaning bearish neutral at the gate. I think we do get a little bit of a pull. Actually, you know what? I guess bullish neutral because I think we get a little bit of a pull into this 190.92. I do think it's going to hold and we see a little bit of a bounce off of that level. So that's what I'll be looking for on square, pull into that bottom end of the range, hold the support, and a bounce off of it this morning. So that's target, and that is square. Let's take a look at the next two. Which are Rita and Mara. So Rita being beaten down a little bit, as we can see here. Right into the 50 MA area. Yeah, that we are. Actually quite a bit of resistance around here. Get rid of that. There you go. All righty, so 96.74 pivot to the upside today, aka the 50 MA on the daily. So a big level of resistance. If it's able to be reclaimed, we do have room towards 100 at 103.25. Unable to hold 91.70 to 87.31 will be tested on the downside. Going to be leaning on the bullish neutral side today. I am looking for a push into that 50 MA. We'll see if we can reclaim it and push. Unable to do so. Like I said, 91.70 to 87.31 will be tested on the downside. Going to be leaning on the bullish neutral side today, though. Looking for a push into it and watching for a reclaim. Let's take a look at Mara. Okay. So obviously on Riot, bear flag on the daily, as well as the hourly, short term, which has confirmed in the pre-market right now. 1992 pivot to the downside today. This level is unable to hold. We do have room towards 18.13. That level breaks. You got room towards 16.26 on the downside. Able to hold. Look for a push back towards 21.77 to 23.01 on the upside. Overall on Mara, going to be leaning more on the bearish neutral side today. Looking for a continuation lower if that pivot's unable to hold. which it's looking like so far this morning, it's not going to be able to hold, but we'll have to see what happens on the open, of course. So that's Rita, that's Mara. Let's take a look at the SPY and the FANG, which is really what I want to look at right now. See what damage has been done, which we already kind of know, but let's get some confirmation. Just gonna save that. Okay. $407 is the 50 EMA. 410 range break. Uptrend support if that level breaks. $402.21. Okay. Just want to know where that level was. Okay, so let's see here intraday. Oops. All right, so there's a channel we're in. I guess I could go lower with it. Let's see. Yep. Pretty large channel to the downside with quite a bit of room there. Okay, so anyways, let's take a look at what we got going on this morning. Just like to look at the whole picture here. Get a good sense of what's going on overall. $405.86. That works. So as we know, pivot to the downside today, guys, is 407, which is the 50 MA. Levels able to hold. Did you have room to bounce back towards 408.34 to 409.28? That level breaks. 410.12 will be retested. Unable to hold. 405.84 to the 404.94 will be tested. That level breaks. 403.98 on the downside. Overall on the SPY, going to be leaning on the bearish side today. Out the gate, at least, looking for a little bit of a pull. I think we can see some basing and a bounce after that, because I do think it's quite extended to the downside, but we'll see what happens. 50 MA doesn't hold, then obviously we can get a little bit more of a pull to the downside. So it is obviously a huge level on the daily, and we'll have to see how it acts. So that's the SPY. Let's take a look at Apple. So Apple bear flagging on the daily. Pivot to the downside today is going to be 123.58. Unable to hold. They got room down towards 122.59 to 121.47. Able to hold. We look for a push back towards 124. 124.95 to 125.92 on the upside. Overall on Apple, going to be leaning on the bearish side today, looking for continuation lower there as well. Let's take a screenshot of that. Let's take a look at Amazon. So rejection at the 50 MA on the daily. Get rid of this little uptrend here. Pivot to the downside today, 31.72.66. Levels unable to hold, 31.38 to 30.97 will be tested. So we'll be back to the bottom end of that range area. If the pivot's able to hold, look for a pushback to 32.08 to 32.50 on the upside. Basically, we'll be pushing back to retest that 50 MA if it does hold the pivot. So we'll see what happens there. Leaning on the, I would say, bullish neutral side. I think we can get a little bit of a hold of the support and a bounce on Netflix. Let's take a look at, or sorry, on Amazon. Let's take a look at Netflix. So obviously bear flagging. Support or pivot 485.64, unable to hold. Room towards 476.78 to 468.64. Able to hold, look for a pushback to 492.82 to 499.18 on the upside. Overall on Netflix, leaning bearish. Looking for a continuation lower today. Let's take a look at Facebook. And back into that downtrend channel. Not quite, but almost. All right, pivot to the downside today, 307.21. Levels unable to hold. We got room towards 303.67 to 299.73. Able to hold, look for pushback to 310.18 to 314.80 on the upside. Sorry, 314.40 on the upside. Overall on Facebook, leaning bearish. Bearish neutral, I should say. Looking for continuation lower today. So that is Facebook. Actually, you know what? I'll be leaning on the bullish side today. I'll be looking for a hold of the downtrend, a little bit of a bounce. We'll see if it occurs. Strong support level. It typically is held in the past. Anyways, let's take a look at Google, which is okay. So 22.48.29 pivot, levels able to hold. We got room back towards the 22.63 to 22.71, unable to hold. 22.28 to the 21.99 on the downside will be tested. Overall on the Google, or on Google, sorry, going to be leaning bearish. I think we do come into that 50 MA this morning, 22.08, and then we can probably see a bounce off of that level. So that is Google. All right. Last but not least, guys, let's take a look at the VIX, and then we'll look at the Qs. And as we know on the VIX, we did get back above the 50 MA on the daily. So we did reclaim that level. 2309s. I believe today is one of the VIX expiration days as well, guys, just an FYI. All right, today we'll use 2310 as the pivot. This level is able to hold in towards 2425 to 2552. Unable to hold, we look for a pullback towards 2185. On the downside to 2078. Again, we use the VIX for direction on the SPY. So if the VIX is continuing to hold, push to the upside, we can expect the SPY to do the inverse. It just allows you to get a little bit of a better read on the market, in my opinion, at least. All right, so that's the VIX. Let's take a look at the Qs. All right, so QQQ, obviously bear flagging on the daily, looks bearish. 317s. Bitcoin at 33K. Holy smokes. She's unwinding, boys and girls. Which means that you're probably going to see, as my guess today, a probably massive bounce at some point. We'll see what happens. 316.51. Pivot to the downside today on the Qs. This level is unable to hold, room towards 312.79 to the 310.92. Able to hold, look for a pushback to 319.58 to 321.08 on the upside. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, bear flagging on the daily with some room lower. Pretty ugly look. I'm definitely leaning bearish on that. Alrighty, guys, that's the SPY. That's the FANG. Those are the individual names that we're looking at today. I'm going to go ahead, pass it over to South Beach as I type up the pre-market action plan. Then we'll do a quick little recap for the open. South Beach, if you're ready, it's all yours. We'll give it a minute, guys. I'm sure he'll pop on.
Yeah, same thing as yesterday. I forgot to turn on the volume. Okay, hump day, guys. Let's see what we got going on. 10-year, unchanged, 1.64. Okay, in Britain, what do we have there? Pretty much unchanged, 0.86. Germany, same thing, 0.11. So the bonds are pretty much unchanged, okay? Pretty much across the board. So the outlook for stocks, really still no competition, okay? That doesn't mean we can't have a correction, but I think equities are the best game in town, okay? And the other two things that, you have bonds, you can have real estate, crypto. Crypto's taking it on the chin today, so we'll visit that in a minute. But, the outlook for equities with all the money sloshing around, pretty good, actually, right? Okay, so let's look at some other stuff. Let's look at commodities. We have oil down 2%. So commodities were soft across the board. Let's look what we got. We got copper down 11 cents, which is a pretty decent move, but it's still at the upper end of the range, right? We went from what, 3 to almost 5 in a hurry, and now we're sitting at 460. Not so terrible. Okay, so that shows good growth, right? You look at the agricultural commodities; they're down anywhere from 1 to 3%. Wheat is down 2, corn's down 1, soybean is down, soy oil is down 3. So basically a little softness in commodities, but you're seeing softness in asset values pretty much across the board, right? Let's look at the currencies. The dollar's strong against the North America, up against Japan, up against China. When things, when you know, the crap hits the fan. Basically, people, you know, go to the dollar, euro, and it's up a little against the dollar. The dollar's up a little against the euro, but basically unchanged there. Okay, so we have that. Crypto world. Okay, this is where the trouble is, clearly. Okay, so you have Bitcoin down about 21%. Okay, Ethereum is down 35%. You know, I got out of this stuff last Wednesday by just a feel. And then what basically happened is I couldn't get back in because my rule wouldn't let me, right? The Bitcoin broke the 10 and 17 day weekly moving average, and it crossed on the 10 and 17 crossed each other on the daily. So to me, you know, my rules are you can't go home with that stuff. You can trade it, but you can't take it home. So Bitcoin was off limits for me to actually be long. Coinbase looks a little better, but it hasn't opened yet on my charts, so it may change. In fact, it probably will. So I'm a bystander until it crosses those moving averages. I don't have the ability to catch a falling knife. It's not my thing. I mean, I could trade it intraday, but I wouldn't take it home. That's the rule. All right, let's look at the foreign markets. Okay, so we have the FTSE down 1.4%, DAX is down almost 2%, CAC is down 1.7%, Nikkei down 1%, but you know, all this stuff started pretty much by the time these guys closed. China's basically flattish, and Hong Kong was up 1.4%. Okay, so that's that. Is there anything else on here that I missed? No. Okay. Okay, so the bonds and the Fed, you're going to have, you're going to see the Fed minutes today, right? There's a fear out there that, you know, the Fed, a lot of questions about the Fed. Is the Fed behind the curve? Is inflation transitory? You know, we do see wage inflation. We saw it from McDonald's. We saw it from Chipotle. We hear, you know, people like Kramer saying he can't find people to work at his restaurant. My wife is in search. She says, you know, prices for the same job are up significantly, maybe 15, 20%. So there's a lack of talent out there in all levels, okay? She's hiring PhDs and stuff like that. And you see it, people working at a Chipotle. So, you know, there certainly is wage inflation out there. Is that transitory? I don't think so, but we'll see what they say in the minutes today. Also, out of Europe, they had mentioned that they may consider tapering. So is the US Fed behind the curve? These are all legitimate questions that I do not have the answers to. Okay. I mean, if I'm guessing, I don't think all the inflation is transitory. And so you see in the market meltdown a little bit here, right? So that's the Fed. China. So China made this big statement today. I mean, people are saying crypto and they're blaming Elon Musk. I don't think Elon Musk means diddly, and when compared to China, okay? China, warning financial institutions not to conduct virtual currency related business, including trading, exchanging fiat currencies for crypto. Okay, so basically they don't want any crypto. They want to go to a digital renminbi, and if the US doesn't get on the stick, their advantage of being a global currency may be questioned. Okay, so I mean, China wants global dominance. I think the US wants global influence. We'll see what happens. But this is a real negative for crypto. Okay, you know, the world's second biggest economy saying that they don't want any crypto. Okay, so ergo, these cryptos getting its brains bashed in today. Okay, what else came out today? Okay, the fact that tax day was on, they took the money out of your account on Monday isn't helping the market either. So it drains a little individual liquidity. Okay, people might have had to sell stuff to pay the government. So that doesn't help the situation either. All right. If I look at the market technically, I think the SPYs look okay. In you know, the way I look at it, On the other hand, the Qs are starting to look shaky. Okay, clearly on the daily, and if this weekly 10 crosses a 17-day, I am negative on the Qs. SPY's still okay. Okay, you guys know the difference, I'm sure. All right, so that's what's going on with that. Let's see if I missed anything. Oh, let's talk about one other thing. So we have gold, we talked about oil, nothing, the virus, there's nothing new there, the dollar. Let's talk about Mr. Market for a minute, okay? I think that's worth discussing. All right, so what did we have yesterday? The market was soft, the averages, I should say, but there were some areas of positivity. Okay, let's look at the negative side first. You had cyclicals, banks, retail, big oil, E&P, semis, hospital stocks, retail, insurance, all on the soft side, right? On the long side, it was mostly EV, solar, and high PE tech, but let's focus on EV and solar, okay? When you have group rotation, okay, and the worst group, which has been EV and solar and public SPACs, okay, which encompass EV and solar to a large extent, rallying. To me, it's two things can happen. Either the market could roll over, which we're kind of seeing today, and or we start a new rotation, okay? And that's how it's always been. So what's going to be? I mean, it seems, are we going to have the rollover? The market's showing that today. Are we going to have the start of a new rotation? Maybe so. Okay, I just don't know the answer. With the bond market the way it is, the 10-year trading at 160, there is not a whole lot of competition for equities. So I'm not that negative. In fact, you know, I think equities are the best game in town, and so it should be okay. But when the crappiest group has the best day and they show something, you've got to pay attention, okay? Because you know it's a pivot point for me. All right, so I just wanted to go over that, okay? So either the rollover or we start a new rotation. That's how I see it, okay? Let's look at the research that we have today. You know, it's hard finding stuff in the research packet that's worthwhile. I think by and large, 95% of the guys that do this for a living are morons. And they just feed on what the company says after their earnings, and they plug it into a spreadsheet, and they come up with targets, and then they change the targets when the stock moves or whatever. But let me give you an example, okay? But let's see if there's anything on the short side. Citibank reiterates the sell in Macy's. And so does Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley is saying basically that a lot of their positivity came out of the stimulus check. And now that that's pretty much over, they think that their business is just I mean, I think Macy's is a complete piece of crap, but it did have a good run. They take the target from 11 to 17, stocks 19. I did try shorting this a bunch of times yesterday with no success. Maybe I made a couple of pennies, but nothing was there worthwhile. What else was on the short side? So we have that. SLAB was downgraded by Citibank. They reduced the target from 163 to 135. And it's less takeover. It's less appealing as a takeover because of some spinoff. I mean, I don't know if I would have a takeover premium in any name, but it appears that they did. Credit Suisse took a visit into the retail space. Okay, their one sell was Williams-Sonoma. They initiate that with a sell 117 target, stocks 170. So that's a significant call. But if you look at some of the things they say, it's quite hard to believe. Like they have Dick's at neutral with a target of 72 and the stock's 86. I don't think that's neutral. I think that's a sell. Bed Bath & Beyond, target 19, stocks 25. Again, I don't know how they get that to be neutral, but they do. AutoZone, they have an outperform. The stock with a $1,400 target, the stock's $1,500. I mean, I don't know where this guy's coming from, honestly. It just, his whole analysis with price targets and ratings doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know what to do. I mean, the only call that's a real sell is Williams Sonoma, but based on his targets and the ratings, I throw what he said into the garbage can, to be honest. On the long side, is there anything else short? Oh, yes. Wells Fargo visited the HMO patch and they have a sell on Molina. That's the only one. And it's basically a target in line. So nothing there to get excited about. Okay. On the long side, Kramer last night said it's time to buy, the reopened stocks. He highlighted, what's it called? A Norwegian Cruise Lines, Wynn, and Disney. Okay. Tudor Pickering. These guys are pretty good analysts, mostly in the oil patch. So take this one as a grain of salt. They initiated Ford and GM both with buys. I think Ford was the only stock that was green. No, it just turned red. Target 17, GM target 76. That guy from Legg Mason, Bill Miller, loves GM. He thinks it can double from here. I think he's a fantastic stock picker. Okay, what else on the long side? Salesforce was upgraded by Morgan Stanley to equal to outperform target 270. I mean, the Fed minutes will have an effect on these stocks. I think if he's constructive on rates where they are, these stocks may get a bounce from there. Home Depot targeted for 345, stocks 318. A lot of guys visited the retail stocks that reported, Home Depot, Walmart, etc. Okay, and by and large, pretty bullish on those two teams. Okay, pretty much across the board. Wells Fargo initiates UNH with a buy, 478 target, stocks 410. They also like CNC, Anthem, and they have a equal weight on CVS. Okay, CVS had a monster day yesterday. Piper likes this NCNO, target 95, stocks 52. Stock has been a complete dog since the day it went public, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, complete piece of crap. All right, maybe it'll have its day, but then you have Fantasyland in the biotech, Wainwright, FRLN, target 30, stocks 8, QURE, target 90, stocks 32. You know, if these guys are right 1 out of 20, I'd be shocked. I mean, it's just a waste. XONE, they like this stock, Adams Harkness, yada, yada, nothing there. Let's see if there's anything that I really, what did I have in purple here? What, WSM, NCNO, that's really it. Okay. Oh, and Jeffries likes Netflix, initiated with a buy, target 620, stocks 486. But of all the stuff that I talked about today, the most important thing is what China said on crypto. Make no mistake about it. Okay. That's causing every weakness, I think, across the board in crypto and everything else, because the people that are long crypto need to raise some dough and they're going to do it where they can, not where they have to. Okay. Let's see what good old Kathy did last night. She's in deep trouble with this move. And if they raise rates, she's in deeper trouble, in my opinion. Tesla, she bought 46K. DraftKings, she bought 700,000. Coinbase, she continues to buy. I'm surprised it's only down 24 points. And what else is she doing? She bought this Blade. You remember that? That's that helicopter service, or I think it was the helicopter service. You know, these SPACs are just, they are taking people to the cleaners, you know, so you got to be careful in that space. I mean, I don't own a SPAC. Anything that has anything to do with SPAC, I want nothing to do with. And you know, I was all in on SPACs, I don't know, 5-6 months ago. What else did she do? That's really it. And on the sell side, she seems to be getting out of all her China stocks. This time it's Hoya. She sold 242,000 shares of that. She sold BEKE, 600,000 shares of that. I don't know. We'll see. I think she's got issues. We'll see. What else came out? Oh, there's a syndicate deal that's important. There's a this Squarespace is going public. It's a division of Square. Okay, easy to use platform for businesses and individuals to create websites. Okay, 40 million priced at the 50 reference point. We've seen these before. These things don't do that, haven't done well in the first couple of weeks, okay, because everybody can sell and the selling overwhelms the buyers. But we'll see, maybe this time is different. What's interesting about this thing is they did a money raise not too long ago, and it was, I think it's $64 they were saying on TV. So very different than the price that it's being the reference point today. But the reference point is just a reference point. It could open 64 very easily, I guess. Okay, there's a couple of secondaries, PRPL being one, two block trades, CG and OZON, and there's 2 more IPOs for the week and 5 secondaries coming. Okay, and what else can I tell you? Okay, look, we got volatility back, which is good. Okay, just, you know, you don't have to trade as big a size, okay, when there's a lot of volatility. My thinking on the market today, I'm thinking materials on the short side. I'm thinking tech, but I kind of sort of think it may bounce. So I'm really not going to go in that area. I'm thinking retail and materials are where my head's at right now. Because if people feel poorer, they'll spend less. The stimulus checks are running out. So those are the 2 areas that I'm thinking to go into this morning as far as, you know, look for weakness. As far as looking to buy things, you may get a bounce on the banks if the Fed is, you know, the Fed minutes feel a little changey, you know, like they're not going to be as, accommodative, and you may get the yield curve moving up. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking, but we have some time for that. And always when in these kinds of trades, you can use a flex point of getting into a stock. There are 2 you can use. One is green on the day. The other one is using the price it opens. And if it dips below that and goes above where it opened, you can use that as a point to get involved and then stop out at that price. Okay. So those are the kinds of things that are going on in my head today. All right. And I'm out of time. So good luck, guys. And let's have a good day.
All righty. Thanks, South Beach. Guys, what's up? Morning. Let's take a quick look and do a little bit of a recap of what we did this morning. I did type up the pre-market action plan, so let's rip through that. If you guys are watching the YouTube stream, you can certainly just pause it on this and read through it. There you go. And then on the option side as well. There you go. All right. Oops. Let's take a look at what we got going on today. So MSTR, coin, target, square, Rita, Mara. MSTR gapping down with Bitcoin, coin gapping down with Bitcoin as well as on that convertible that they did. Target earnings beat, EPS and revs year-over-year growth 23.4%. Stock is gapping or was gapping up, still is a little bit up. Square gapping down in sympathy with the market. And also they did a senior note, $2 billion institutional offering. Read-up announces FDA has asked the company to request a pre-NDA meeting. Stock's gapping up on that. And then Mara gapping down in sympathy with Bitcoin. Let's take a look at these names from a technical standpoint intraday. So first 2 going to be Master and Coin. MSTR, I should say. MicroStar. MSTR. Pivot to the downside today, 437.50, unable to hold towards 404.59, which is where we're at. That level breaks, 373s will be tested. Able to hold, look for a pushback to 467 to 501.19 on the upside. Overall on MSTR leading bearish. You may get a little bit of a bounce this morning, guys. It's a pretty huge move in the pre-market already, but I am leaning more on the bearish side for now. So we'll see what happens there. Coin, same sort of idea. Pivot to the downside today is going to be that 223.14 level. Oops, 223.14. This level is unable to hold. We got room for continuation into the. Get a lower level. There you go. We got room for continuation into the 216.47 to 212.05. If that level breaks, we can see further continuation lower. into the 205.30 level on the downside. Able to hold, we look for a pushback on MSTR into the 230.07 to 238.69 level on the upside. Overall on coin, going to be leaning bearish, looking for a continuation lower. Don't need to screenshot that. So we'll see what happens there. Let's take a look at the next two, which are Target and Rita. Target, Rita. Let's take the gander, my friends. Target pivot to the downside today, 210.86, unable to hold 208.88 to 206.23 will be tested. Able to hold, look for pushback to 213.76 to 217.34 on the upside. Overall on Target, going to be leaning on the bearish side. I don't think, well, bullish, but I'm looking for a gap fill basing to take the name on the long side. And it's, doing just that right now. Rita, let's take a look at this. No, it should be square. Square pivot to the upside or downside today, 197.67. Unable to hold towards 190.92 to 185.56. Able to hold, look for pushback to 203.37 to the 208.96 on the downside. Overall leaning bearish out the gate. Now that we've had this huge move in the pre-market, guys, I'm thinking that you're going to get probably a bounce on the open. So, we'll see what happens. I know, earlier I said I'm leaning bearish, but, we obviously just got a huge move. So things do change pretty quickly. Rita and Mara, let's take a look at these two. Rita at 96.74 pivot. This level is able to hold. We got room towards 100 to 103.25. Unable to hold, look for a pullback towards 91.70 to 87.31 on the downside. Overall on Rita, leaning bullish, neutral, looking for a continuation push higher today. Let's take a look at Mara, 1992 pivot. Levels unable to hold towards 1813 to 1626. Able to hold 2177 to 2301 will be tested. And I was leading bearish on that one as well. And we'll see if it holds the bottom of the range and bounces or not. Let's take a look at the SPY and the FANG. But keep an eye on GBTC today, guys, which is the Bitcoin, one of the Bitcoin ETFs. 407.02 pivot on the SPY. And I'm going to type this up as I usually do. SPY 407.02 pivot to the downside today. This level is unable to hold. Room lower into the 405.84 support. Breaks. We see the 404.94 and 403.98 tested. Pivot holds. Room into the 408.34. 409.28, then 410.12 on the upside. I'm going to be leaning bearish unless that pivot holds out the gate, guys, for a bounce. So we'll see what happens in that regard. Pivot is obviously the big level there. All right, so let's take a look at Apple. Apple pivot to the downside today, guys, is going to be that 123.56 level. Unable to hold. We got room down towards 122.59 to 121.47. Able to hold. We look for a pushback into the 124.95 to 125.92 on the upside. Overall on Apple, going to be leaning on the bearish neutral side today. Amazon pivot downside is going to be the 31.72 spot. Levels able to hold towards 32.08 to 32.50. Unable to hold 31.38 to 30.97 on the downside will be tested. And I'm leaning on the bullish neutral side of Amazon today, looking for a little bit of a bounce to the upside. Pivot on the downside, 485.64 on Netflix, unable to hold, towards 476.78 to 468.64. Able to hold, look for a pushback to 492.82 to 499.18 on the upside. Unable to hold Netflix, unable to pivot, sorry, on Netflix, looking for continuation lower. Leaning on the bearish side of that name today. Let's take a look at Facebook, which I changed to bullish, neutral. Pivot 307.21, levels able to be reclaimed, towards 310.18 to 314.40. Unable to hold, 303.67 to 299.73 will be tested. Overall on Facebook, leaning on the bullish neutral side, looking for a reclaim the pivot, like I said. And then Google, pivot to the downside today is the 22.48, unable to hold, 22.28 to 21.96 to 21.99 will be tested. Able to hold, look for a pushback to 22.63 to 22.71 on the upside. Overall on Google, leaning on the bearish neutral side today, looking for a little bit of a continuation lower into that daily 50 MA. All right, let's take a look at the VIX. VIX pivot 23.10, able to hold towards 24.25 to 25.22, unable to hold 21.85 to the 20.75 level on the downside. We'll see what happens there. Again, we use it for a direction on the SPY. And then last but not least, guys, QQQ. QQQs 316.51 pivot, able to be reclaimed towards 319.58 to 321.06, unable to hold 312.79 to 310.92 will be tested on the downside. Overall, leaning on the bearish side today if that pivot's unable to hold. So we'll see what happens this morning. So anyways, guys, that's a SPY, that's a FANG. Those are the individual names that we're looking at today. If you guys do have any questions, you can go to SpartanTrading.com. Otherwise, thanks for watching this.